Your goal in watching this video is to take careful, organized notes that you can use when we're working on dividing decimals and to understand how to divide decimals. So first thing I want you to do is to open up your math notebook to the Chapter 2 section. Find a blank space, all right? And I want you to write what I write in the video on that blank page. I want to make sure or give you a refresher on three math terms that I'm going to be using a lot throughout the video, so I want you to be solid on what they mean. So please write this division problem down on your paper in your math notebook, and we're going to label these with what they're called. So 5 2/10 is the dividend. It's the number being divided out. That's spelled very wrong, all right? Dividend. Let's try it like that. All right, then this number up here, the number that we're dividing it by, that's called the divisor. Finally, the number we get when we divide the dividend by the divisor, or our answer, is called the quotient. So please have this written down, even if you remember already. Pause if you need more time. I'm going to go out. All right, next thing I want you to do on another blank page in your math notebook, this will be the last blank page you need for your video. All right, take your notebook page and I want you to copy down on it what you see in this box. So this box just represents your notebook page. You don't have to you don't have to draw that one. But at the top of your notebook page, write dividing decimals. Then we have two definition boxes. The top box should say, when dividing by a whole number. So that box is going to talk about what you do if you have a decimal divided by a whole number. Your second box below it will tell what you do when you divide a decimal by another decimal. Okay? And then you can use up the rest of your page for two big boxes, which will have examples. Okay. So we're going to focus on this first box first, when you are dividing by a whole number. So first thing that you need to do when you're dividing by a whole number, your divisor is a whole number, is you need to put a decimal point in the quotient, which is the answer when you divide. Put a decimal point in the quotient above the decimal point in the dividend. So let's get that written down. Again, for those of you who think my gorgeous handwriting is a little hard to read, put a decimal point in the quotient, which is the answer when you divide, above the decimal point in the dividend. After you've done that, then you can divide as you would with whole numbers and continue until there is no remainder. So again, that says divide as with whole numbers and continue until there is no remainder. All right, we are going to do an example like this. So an example of dividing a decimal by a whole number. So go down to your first example box, and a little bit farther down the list. There we go. Right, and please copy this problem. 4 3/800 divided by 12. If you weren't done writing the instructions yet for that last definition box, you can go back and pause the video so you can catch up. Okay, so here we have our dividend. 4.38, 4 3/800. It's being divided by our divisor, which is 12. Okay, so first thing that our instructions tell us to do, I'm going to go back to our instruction page. It says, put a decimal point in the quotient, or answer, above the decimal point in the dividend. So let's do that. All right, a decimal point in the quotient, or answer, above the decimal point in the dividend. Okay, and then our next step is just to divide as we would with whole numbers. So I would say, okay, how many times does 12 go into 4? It doesn't. All right, how many times does it go into 43? All right, 12 goes into 43 3 times. 12 times 3 is 36. 43 minus 36 is 7. Bring down the 8. We're at 78. How many times does 12 go into 78? Goes into 78 6 times, because 12 times 6 is 72. All right, so I'm going to say it goes in 6 times. 12 times 6 is 72. All right, and we need to continue until there's no remainder. So 8 minus 2 is 6. I'm going to put a 0 here and bring a 0 down here. 12 goes into 65 times exactly. which is awesome because that means we're done. There's no remaking. All right, if I had estimated that problem, just to check my answer, all right, 365,000 is less than half, all right? It's less than half of a whole. So if I would estimate this, and I would say, $4.38, that's about 4. 4 divided by 12, okay? If I had 4 cheesecakes, and I divided them up between 12 of you, all right, you would each get less than half a cheesecake, because 12, our divisor, is bigger than 4, our dividend. So 4 divided by 12 is less than half, okay? And our answer is less than half, so it looks like I probably did a pretty decent job. Let's go back, one more time, pause. I'm going to go back to our definition page, and we're going to fill in the second box. So this time we're going to talk about dividing by a decimal. So maybe in this case you have 5.4, 5 4/10 divided by 1.2. Okay, they're both decimals. So this is what to do if your divisor has a decimal in it. So first thing you need to do is multiply the divisor by a power of 10 that gets rid of the decimal point. And do whatever you do to the divisor to the dividend. So in this example I wrote down over here, I'm going to rewrite it so it's a little bit better. Our divisor has a decimal in it. We don't want that. We could take 1.2 times 10 to get rid of the decimal point. 1.2 times 10 is 12. In other words, we move the decimal over. All right. So if we take our divisor times 10, we need to also take our dividend times 10. So we end up with 12 and 54. 54 divided by 12. Okay. If you need more time to write that down, pause and rewind. Okay, and then your final step, after you've done that, after you've gotten rid of the decimal point in the divisor, is to just follow these steps up here. Now you have the same sort of problem. Okay, so we're going to say follow the steps for dividing by a whole number listed above. Pause if you need more time. I'm going to go on. We're going to do an example that is like this, that you'll need these instructions for. Okay. So in this case, we have a decimal being divided by a decimal. 21 and 643 thousandths divided by 2 and 3/10. So our instructions for a problem like this, if I go back and look at them, say, multiply the divisor by a power of 10. That gets rid of the decimal point. Okay. So since this number, our divisor, only has one number after the decimal point, we just move our decimal point 1 to the right, which is like dividing by, which is like multiplying by 10. If I do that to the divisor, I also have to do the exact same thing to the dividend. All right? So we have 23 divided by 216 and 43 hundredths. So your dividend might still have a decimal point in it, like this one does, but your divisor should not. Now we just ask ourselves, okay, how many times, first we copy our decimal points in the quotient, all right? We say how many times does 23 go into 0? 0, or into 2, 0 times. How many times does it go into 21? 0 times. How many times does 23 go into 216? So I'm going to say, okay, 23 is about 25, close to 25. And 25 goes into 100 4 times. So 25 goes into 200 8 times. All right, let's try that first. 23 times 8. 16, 17, 18. 184. I think we can fit another 23 in there. So let's try 23 times 9. 207. All right, that looks like a better fit. So we're going to say 23 goes into 216 9 times, and that gives us 207. Okay. Now I'm going to subtract. All right, bring down my 4. 23 goes into 94. 23 goes into 100 about 4 times. Let's see, since 23 is less than 25 and 94 is less than 100, let's try 4 times. 92. All right, so 4 times 92, 23. Okay. How many times does 23 go into 23? Once. Yay! Okay, no remainder, which is super nice, because then we don't have to keep adding zeros and dividing. So our answer is 9 41/100, which can also be written like this. Okay, when you are done and you have all these notes copied down in your notebook, please raise your hand. We will come check it, and then you can go on to the practice.